Congratulations, you've made it from segment 1 to segment 2, and now we're in segment 3. And again, I'd like to remind you that if you retain just a portion of what we've talked about in the first few segments, that's absolutely great. Go over your workbook, view it one more time, 2 more times, and keep reviewing it, and you'll find out that invariably it becomes part of your everyday process in your recording studio. And again, we have online classes that'll go a lot deeper and will get a lot more involved in the information and the application. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about microphones, a little bit about different types of microphones, some examples of those types, and we're also going to talk about why you would use a certain type or brand of microphone for one application or another. First, we really want to start at the beginning though. What is a microphone? It's just really a transducer. What it does is it takes acoustic energy, whether it's your vocal, whether it's a guitar amplifier, a drum, and it actually transduces it or transforms it into electronic pulses so we can record it. But in that process of changing that sound, it actually equalizes the sound. In our first 2 lessons, we talked about equalization, adding bass, mid-range, or treble, or subtracting bass, mid-range, or treble. And it makes a real difference in the way that sound represents on a recording. Well, a microphone, in a sense, is an equalizer. All microphones have a different frequency response, and what that means is that each microphone, when the sound enters it, will affect that sound differently. It will increase or decrease the bass, it will increase or decrease the mid-range, or it will increase and decrease the treble. So all things are not equal with microphones. This is important to consider when you choose a microphone, since you're essentially equalizing or changing the sonic quality of that sound with the microphone itself. Let's talk about the 4 different categories, if you will, of microphones. First, I want to talk about the most common, which is the dynamic moving coil microphone. This microphone I'm holding in my hand may look familiar to you. It's a Shure SM57. Or you may have seen a similar type of mic with a ball around the top, which is a windscreen, and that's a Shure SM58, commonly used for live application and stage. One of the characteristics, if you will, of this dynamic moving coil microphone is that it has what's called a proximity effect. In other words, the closer the singer or the instrument gets to the microphone, the more accentuation in the mid-range it has. So if you want the singer to sound punchier on stage, or you want the guitar amp to sound punchier in the recording, you would put the source or the amplifier or the singer's voice or lips closer to the actual microphone. Conversely, as you get further away from the mic, the sound is going to get a lot thinner. So if you place a dynamic type mic like a Shure SM57 or some of the other dynamic type mics further away from the source, a singer's mouth or an amplifier, it's not going to give you a real good representation of that sound, since it would get very thin. But one of the advantages of that is it'll pick up sound close to the mic. That's why it's used on stage, because if I was singing on stage right now with the drum set behind me, using a dynamic mic would be much better than a condenser mic, because a dynamic mic's only going to pick up the immediate source in front of it, and it's less likely to get a lot of the cymbals and the drums behind me coming through the vocal mic. Primarily in the recording studio, though, we use a dynamic mic because it does have that nice punchiness when you get close to it. It also handles what we call a high sound pressure level. So if I'm recording an instrument, say a drum or a guitar amp playing loudly, I'm going to use a dynamic type mic because it's going to give me the ability to record a lot of volume, a very loud source, without overloading the coil or capsule. That's very important in recording. Obviously, you don't want to overload the microphone. It'll produce distortion in your recording. So let's talk about a few different types of dynamic moving coil microphones. We've talked about the SM57. This is a Sennheiser 421 dynamic microphone. The difference between this microphone and this microphone is, as you can see, this has a little bit larger area here, and this has got a smaller area. In the Shure SM57, it tends to accentuate or boost the high mid frequencies, the higher type of the punchy frequencies that you want to hear in a guitar sound. The 421 tends to accentuate some of the lower mid frequencies. So if I was going to record a guitar amp, I may use a 57 and a 421. And then I could decide how much of this mic and how much of this mic I was actually going to hear to produce the overall sound. But as you could tell, I'm now engineering with these microphones. They're not just used to record a sound. I'm actually determining by the use of the choice of mics, I'm going to equalize or EQ that sound as I'm recording it by using two of these microphones. I'm going to introduce us to a third type mic, and this is called a Electro Voice RE20. Now these mics are fairly affordable. Most of them are under $300, and you can get them at your local music store. The RE20, as you can see, has a larger diaphragm here. Well, this tends to accentuate some of the lower frequencies, and it decreases some of the higher frequencies. So if I was going to use this for a guitar, it wouldn't pick up some of the punchiness that the SM57 would. I'm going to use this RE20 maybe for a bass drum, maybe a bass guitar, some of the lower frequency instrumentation. But again, it's a dynamic mic, so proximity effect applies. I want the source relatively close to the microphone, and it can handle a very high sound pressure level, which is a lot of volume coming in the mic without overloading, so perfect for a loud bass guitar amp or a loud bass drum. Some people use these for vocals too, to give a lot of emphasis to the low end body of the voice. A lot of rap records are recorded with this type of microphone as well, and you may have seen radio broadcast shows where the DJ or radio announcer has used an RE20 for their voice, because they get that nice deep bass tone in the voice and it eliminates some of the higher frequencies. But again, they're intentionally using this microphone to produce a certain equalization or sonic quality on the sound. All of these microphones are dynamic moving call mics, and they're typically in a pickup pattern that we call cardioid, and what that means basically is a big word, but it just means that it's picking up the information in this immediate area in front of the microphone. Information coming from behind the microphone or the side of the microphone typically isn't really making it into the microphone as well as information recorded right in the front area. So these are dynamic microphones, very commonly used in a home studio, in the recording studio here in a world-class level, and also in live sound. Let's move on now to a second type of microphone, and we're calling this a condenser type microphone. Now, condenser microphones are a little bit different. They require some power, so sometimes they'll ask you to put a battery in them. Sometimes they'll plug into a recording console or some sort of device that talks about what they call phantom power. You'll look in your workbook, you'll see I issued the term 48V or 48 volts. Well, phantom power is 48 volts, and that's required to drive a condenser type transistor microphone. Condenser microphones are different from dynamic mics. One of the main differences is usually they have a wider, flatter frequency response. Instead of accentuating the low frequency, accentuating the low mid frequency like the 421 or the high mid frequency like the 57, they tend to be flatter from high frequency to low frequency. So this is going to give you a more true representation of the sound that you're hearing in the room. It also has the ability to pick up sound, full-bodied sound, from further away. Oftentimes we'll use these for room mics to pick up a sound 20 feet away from the actual source and still get a nice full-bodied sound in the microphone. Conversely, some of them are a little temperamental, so you don't want to put a lot of loud instruments in front of them because it could overload and produce distortion, which is why you'd want to use the dynamic mic. There's some settings on here also that you can see have little designs and symbols. And basically, they're just a diagram of the pickup patterns. We can control the pickup patterns of these microphones. We could use them in the cardioid fashion, similar to the dynamic mic. We could have more of a omnidirectional pickup pattern, which is actually picking up information all around the microphone. We could pick up information just in the front and just in the back in a figure 8 type of situation. Whatever the application is, it involves you being able to have these options to produce creativity. So in some cases, you may place one of these in a room and you get sound coming in one side and another side, producing more of a stereo effect really. although it's still going in the same microphone. And in some cases, you'd want it to just pick up the information in front. In some cases, you set it in the room, you want it to pick up the entire reverb of the room, so you'd put it in an omnidirectional pattern. Again, most of them have diagrams to show you the exact pickup patterns. These also have other functions on them. We talked about the high-pass filters on the recording console, where we take some of the bass frequency and we get rid of it and we just let the high frequency through. Well, they have high-pass filters on condenser mics usually, not all the time, and these give us the ability to select a frequency to roll off the bass frequencies. Again, if I were to use these for overheads and recording cymbals or hi-hats, then I would be more likely to roll off the low frequency and stop the low frequency from making it through the microphone. And that's what they're for. And then finally, we have pads. What a pad is the ability to decrease the signal as it's coming through the microphone. So, as I said earlier, if you have too much volume coming in here or too much volume coming through the mic to the microphone preamp at the board, it may be necessary for you to reduce that signal at the source here and put a pad on it of 10 dB or 20 dB. Really, it's just a slight padding on the volume of the signal, if you will. Rather than tell the bass player to turn down or the guitar player to turn down or the drummer stop hitting the drum so hard, you could quickly put a pad on the mic, and that way you wouldn't have that distortion that would be produced otherwise. Now, the 414 is a very commonly used professional microphone. They're a little bit more higher priced, I should say, than the dynamic mics, but if you're able to afford one, I think they're a great mic to get. There's other really good mics on the market as well. This is a baby bottle. This is also a condenser type microphone. Producing a very distinct, significant sound, but again, a lot of the same characteristics as the 414. Great vocal mic, by the way. And this little microphone here is an AKG 451. Now, this microphone has a smaller diaphragm. So it's unique in that it really is designed to pick up some of the higher frequencies and not the lower frequencies because of the smaller diaphragm. We're more likely to use this for cymbals or some high-end instrument. I've used this mic also for acoustic guitars and put one on the neck and it sounds really good, and put another one on the body, and together they sounded great. So, you know, there's a lot of good applications for this particular mic. Maybe not the best vocal mic because, again, it's not really going to be a full-bodied sound. Okay, well, another type of condenser mic is a tube condenser mic. These don't require batteries or phantom power. They're actually powered by a tube type of amplifier. In a case where we heard the guitar going through the tube compressor limiter, it added a lot of warmth to the sound, a certain sonic quality or musicality, if you will, that sort of felt good and was certainly a different sound than it was without the tube limiter. And the tube limiter produced a different result than the limiter that wasn't tube driven. Well, the same is true for microphones. The tube microphones produce a nice, warm, sort of musical sound. They're very, very common and sort of the mainstay for the recording industry for the last 50 years, that vocals have been recorded, for the most part, through tube-driven condenser mics. They're considered some of the best mics ever made. This is a Neumann or a Telefunken U47 tube mic. Is a very expensive microphone. It's commonly found in high-end, world-class recording studios like this. Chances are you wouldn't buy one of these for your home studio. If you're really serious about making your recordings, though, you may consider renting a really nice tube mic the day you're recording the vocals for your song. That could be affordable and could be a great investment for you to make, and it may be surprisingly affordable for you. But regardless of that, if you could find a lower-priced tube-driven microphone, it certainly will give you some of that warmth and some of that quality that we're experiencing here with these high-end mics, and certainly that you heard with the tube compressor limiter in the earlier demonstration. So let's recap for a moment. We have the moving coil dynamic microphone. We have the condenser type microphone. Then we have the condenser microphone that's driven by a tube. The third type of microphone I'm going to talk about here is the PZM, or the pressure zone microphone. Now, you may have never seen one of these before. Actually, this is a Crown PZM. I think the only other company that's ever made one, to my knowledge, was Radio Shack. And what this is used for really is to record the vibrations of a sound going through a surface. For example, if I was recording drums in here, I certainly would want microphones on the drums itself, but if I wanted a unique sound, I may put this on the glass over here between the control room and the studio, and actually, you know, get some of the vibrations of the drums coming through the glass as a whole drum kit. I may put it on the wood of an acoustic baby grand piano just to record some of those vibrations. Certainly not used very much in a professional setting, and not very likely that you'll have use for it